Have you ever found yourself angry and then almost immediately feeling guilty for feeling that way? Maybe someone betrayed your trust. Maybe someone crossed a boundary. Maybe someone spoke to you in a way that just wasn't right. Instead of asking yourself why you're angry, you may have found yourself wondering, what's wrong with me? Today, I'd like to offer you a different perspective. What if your anger isn't your enemy? What if it's trying to make you aware of something important? I invite you to grab your favorite beverage and settle in with me as we explore what anger may actually be trying to show you.
Becoming the magnificence in me, empowered, strong, and gracefully, with poise and elegance, I can see I am who I was born to be.
Welcome to Becoming Conversations in Elegance and Empowerment, a sanctuary for women who desire to live with purpose, grace, and quiet confidence. I'm Senée Luchsinger, your host, author, and transformation guide. Gentlemen are welcome to listen in, but this space is intentionally crafted for the elegant woman becoming all she's meant to be. If this conversation resonates and you'd like focused private support, I invite you to explore private coaching. You can find more information anytime at becomingpublishing.com. Now, let's step into today's topic. You may have heard while you were growing up that nice girls don't get angry. Ladies don't raise their voices. Ladies keep the peace. Ladies smile. Ladies let things roll off their backs. I heard that my whole life. As an adult, I say to that, Lord, no. The elegant woman isn't someone who never experiences anger. She's a woman who learns how to respond to it with wisdom. There's a tremendous difference. One of the biggest misconceptions I see is that people confuse feeling anger with acting in anger. Those are two very different things. I ran from even feeling anger my whole life because I was told that I wasn't allowed to be angry. I also experienced the negative aspects of other people acting in anger, and I wanted nothing to do with it. I didn't want to be like them and hurt others, so I ran from anger. Feeling anger is part of the human experience. What we choose to do with that anger is where wisdom begins. Many women come to me quietly questioning themselves after a difficult relationship, painful family dynamics, or a major life transition. Some are angry about years they believe they lost. Some are angry that they weren't protected. Some are angry they've spent decades putting everyone else's needs ahead of their own. Others tell me they aren't angry at all. They're just tired, emotionally exhausted, irritable, numb. When we gently begin exploring what's beneath the surface, we often discover that anger has been quietly waiting there all along, not as the problem, as the messenger. I've shared many times in my work over the years that we grieve many things throughout our lives, not only the death of someone we love. We grieve broken dreams, broken trust, relationships that didn't become what we hoped they would become, opportunities that slipped away, the life we imagined we'd be living by now. It's vitally important to realize and remember that one of the normal stages of grief is anger, not bitterness, not revenge, not hatred, anger. Years ago, while studying marriage and family therapy, one of my professors described anger as a beneficial emotion. She called it powerful but alienating. I've never forgotten that description. Powerful because anger often gives us the courage to recognize that something isn't right. Alienating because unmanaged anger can damage the very relationships we're hoping to preserve. Over the years, I've come to understand anger a little differently. I believe anger is an internal alarm system. Think about the smoke detector in your home. When it goes off, your first response probably isn't to search online about how the sound comes out of it. I imagine you're like me and you stop and ask, why is it going off? Is something burning? Is there an actual fire? Does it simply need a new battery? Did my cooking smoke up the house again? The last townhouse my husband and I lived in had that exact problem. Cooking bacon or anything that might produce smoke caused the alarm to go off. And trust me when I tell you that they were deafening. Just let me say what you already know. The alarm isn't the emergency. It's alerting you that something deserves your attention, that there could be a life-threatening event taking place, and you may need to take action to protect yourself. I believe anger often works the same way. Instead of immediately trying to push it away, silence it, or pretend it isn't there, what if we became curious? What if, instead of asking, how do I stop feeling angry, we asked, what is my anger trying to show me? Possibly it's revealing that a boundary has been crossed. It could be exposing grief that hasn't been acknowledged or processed. Maybe it's making us aware that we've been accepting less than we truly deserve. It's also possible that it's simply reminding us that something within our kingdom needs our attention. As I've said for years, keep your crown on and stay on your throne. The elegant woman doesn't pretend she isn't angry. She acknowledges its presence. She becomes curious about what it's trying to tell her. Then, from the throne, not from the emotion, she decides how she's going to respond. Her response is rarely lashing out. That's giving your power away to outside people. She may choose to be silent. She may choose to remove herself from the other person's kingdom. Whatever she chooses to do, she does it from her own seat of power to preserve her kingdom and protect the queen. She takes responsibility for her decisions and actions, and she acts in ways of grace and poise. This always confuses people because they expect her to say, off with their heads. Acting in grace and poise preserves her kingdom and takes away any weapons others could use against her. They can't call her crazy, psycho, a queen bee word. I invite you to stay with me because next we're going to explore what psychology, neuroscience, and scripture have to say about anger and why acknowledging it may be one of the healthiest things we can do. If this conversation is resonating and you recognize yourself in what we're discussing, I invite you to apply for private coaching. I work privately with a small number of women each season who are ready to rebuild confidence, strengthen emotional boundaries, and make clear decisions in life and love. This is structured, focused work, not surface motivation. If you're navigating heartbreak or life transitions and you want grounded private support, you can apply at becomingpublishing.com. I personally review every application. One of the reasons I believe so many women struggle with anger is because we've often been taught to judge it before we understand it. The messages I mentioned earlier that we may have heard while growing up about how ladies and anger don't exist together may have been well-intentioned, but they can leave us believing that feeling angry somehow makes us bad people. It doesn't. One of the leading researchers on emotions, psychologist Dr. Paul Ekman, identified anger as one of our basic human emotions. In other words, anger isn't something that's wrong with us. It's part of being human. The question isn't whether you'll experience anger. The question is what you'll choose to do with it. There have been seasons in my life when I literally lost my voice and my ability to sing or speak above a whisper. At one point, it lasted for more than 3 months. Looking back, I believe I was carrying emotions that I wasn't expressing. Research today tells us that suppressing emotion doesn't make it disappear. Dr. Susan David, a psychologist at Harvard Medical School and author of Emotional Agility, cautions against what she calls emotional suppression, which is the habit of pushing uncomfortable emotions away or pretending they don't exist. Research consistently shows that suppressing emotions doesn't make them disappear. They often become stronger or show up in other ways such as anxiety, resentment, emotional exhaustion, or even physical symptoms. In other words, ignoring anger doesn't heal it. Understanding it does. When I was growing up, my grandparents always told us never to go to bed angry if we wanted to have a long, healthy marriage. They always resolved their disagreements in front of us before going to bed and woke up acting pleasant the next day. I thought this was common knowledge. It made sense. I saw it work in real time. I found out later in marriage that it wasn't common knowledge, and some people refuse to practice it, putting their wants and needs ahead of the relationship. I found it tended to increase my anger when I woke up the next morning. I was mad when I finally went to bed, but I woke up mad the next day. This is one example of how suppression of anger doesn't work. I don't believe the goal is to become a woman who never gets angry. All humans experience anger, even babies who aren't aware of emotions and how to process them yet. I believe the goal is to become a woman who understands what her anger is trying to communicate. Sometimes it's revealing that someone has violated one of your values. Sometimes it's showing you that you've ignored your own needs for far too long. Sometimes it's reminding you that you've been carrying grief you never gave yourself permission to acknowledge. Sometimes it's alerting you that something simply isn't healthy. Anger doesn't always tell us exactly what needs to change. It simply tells us something deserves our attention. Then wisdom helps us determine what comes next. I also think it's important to distinguish between acknowledging our anger and acting on our anger. Those aren't the same things. Acknowledging says, I'm angry. Acting without wisdom says, I'm going to make someone else or even myself pay for how I feel. The elegant woman doesn't ignore her emotions. She also doesn't allow them to become the ruler of her kingdom. She notices them. She becomes curious about them. Then she decides how to respond with love, wisdom, grace, and class. Religious text offers similar wisdom. Ephesians 4:26 tells us, quote, be angry and do not sin, end quote. Notice what it doesn't say. It doesn't say never be angry. It acknowledges that anger will come. Then it invites us to choose our response wisely. During a dark time in my life, that verse changed the way I thought about anger. It didn't tell me not to feel anger. It told me I was responsible for what I did with it. A counselor friend of mine once told me that do not sin simply means don't do anything that would hurt you or another person. I've come to describe it in my work as don't burn down someone's house, beat their car up with a baseball bat, or attack the new wife in a grocery store parking lot. These all sound like funny examples and things I would never do as an elegant woman, but these are real-life examples. I know of people who have done these very things, and they're examples of what not to do. Even Jesus, who is considered to be an ascended master by many non-religious people, demonstrated what many theologians describe as righteous anger when he drove the money changers from the temple. His response wasn't rooted in selfishness or revenge. It was rooted in protecting something sacred. There was a period in my life when I discovered a betrayal that completely shattered my understanding of my life. Instead of expressing my anger, I turned it inward. I became physically ill. I could not eat for nearly a week. One of the girls in my graduate program became concerned about me. She gently introduced me to something I'd heard my whole life but never really considered before, the biblical idea of righteous anger. I knew the examples from the Bible, but I never allowed myself to consider for 1 minute that it could actually apply to me. I thought I didn't have the right to be angry about anything, especially the horrible things that had happened to me, because people always told me I couldn't be angry, that it wasn't ladylike, that it wasn't convenient for them to witness, that it would make everyone associated with me look bad. The most extreme emotion I remember acknowledging was hurt. Anger became something I avoided at all costs. I became very good at it until it took its toll on me. That precious girl in graduate school was the one person to speak truth to me in that moment. I finally realized that not all anger is destructive. Sometimes anger is our response to injustice. Sometimes it's our response to abuse. Sometimes it's our response to betrayal. Sometimes it's the part of us that recognizes this isn't right. She reminded me that the examples I'd read about in Scripture weren't just stories about other people. They applied to me too. That realization has stayed with me ever since graduate school. That experience was the beginning of a completely different understanding of anger for me. I eventually came to realize that anger isn't the enemy. It's an internal alarm system. It reminded me that anger itself isn't necessarily the problem. The question is always, what is this anger asking me to protect? And how can I respond in a way that's aligned with my values? There's a difference between anger that's asking us to protect what is good and anger that's tempting us to destroy. One calls us toward wisdom, the other pulls us toward regrets. That's why I encourage women to become observers of their own emotions. Instead of immediately judging yourself for feeling angry, I encourage you to become curious. You can ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to make me aware of? What boundary may have been crossed? What loss am I grieving? What value is asking to be protected? Those questions often lead us toward healing. Trying to pretend we're never angry usually doesn't. If today's conversation has you recognizing that you've been carrying anger longer than you realized, I want you to know you don't have to sort through it alone. Many women schedule a clarity reset because they're tired of trying to figure everything out by themselves. Sometimes one focused conversation is all it takes to begin seeing things differently. If you'd like to learn more, I invite you to visit becomingpublishing.com. I'd be honored to walk alongside you. I invite you to stay with me because next I'm going to show you how to put all this information into practice in your own life. Many of the ideas we're exploring this season are expanded on in my newest book, Becoming Lavishly Loving, available on Spotify, my website, and most online booksellers. It explores intuition, emotional boundaries, and protecting your inner world with elegance. For women who are ready to apply this work in real time, not just understand it intellectually, I offer a private 3-month coaching container where we rebuild confidence and clarity from the inside out. You can learn more and apply at becomingpublishing.com. So what do we actually do when anger shows up? The first thing I'd encourage you to do is nothing, at least not immediately. One of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves is the space to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. I have often said that text messaging is a wonderful invention, not because it allows us to hide. I think it's so great, and it's my primary mode of communication because it gives me time to process, time to breathe, time to ask myself, how do I want to remember responding to this? It also gives us a chance to vent our frustrations in private without having that reaction used against us. Most importantly, it gives us time to collect our thoughts and react in a way that feels most becoming and empowering to us. The elegant woman understands that anyone can stay elegant when everyone is being kind. Our elegance is often revealed when someone is trying to provoke us. That's when we discover whether we're allowing another person's behavior to determine our own. That's what I call taking your crown off and letting someone else wear it and sit on your throne. It renders us powerless in our own kingdom. Some people actually benefit when you lose your composure because once you step off your throne, the focus shifts from what happened to how you reacted. That's why I say keep your crown on and stay on your throne, not because you don't have a right to feel anger. It's because your sovereignty is too valuable to surrender. Many women come to me after they've said something they wish they could take back. Others come because they never said anything at all. They've swallowed their feelings for so many years that anger has quietly become resentment. Neither extreme brings peace. The goal isn't to explode. The goal isn't to pretend nothing's happened. The goal is wisdom. I've learned something over the years that has served me well. Acknowledging an emotion and understanding an emotion are not the same thing. You don't have to fully understand your anger today. You simply need to acknowledge that it's there. Understanding often comes later, sometimes much later. Distance has a way of giving us perspective that we simply don't have in the middle of the pain. I've come to realize that you can't have full vision of some aspects of life until you're completely removed from them and they're no longer affecting you. That's especially true in relationships. While you're living inside the situation, your perspective is limited. Years later, when you're standing on different ground, you often see things with a clarity that wasn't possible before. That's the gift of hindsight. There have been seasons in my own life when I couldn't immediately explain why I was so angry. I just knew something wasn't right. Looking back months or sometimes years later, I could finally see what my heart had recognized long before my mind could explain it. That's one of the reasons I encourage women not to judge themselves too quickly. How do you know what anger is trying to show you? If today's conversation has you thinking differently about anger, here are a few ideas to consider in the coming days. Number 1, notice the alarm before you silence it. The next time you feel anger rising, it's imperative that you resist the urge to immediately tell yourself you shouldn't feel that way. Instead, I encourage you to simply acknowledge it. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to act on it. You don't even have to like what it's telling you. Just notice it. I encourage you to ask yourself, what might this emotion be trying to make me aware of? Just like the smoke detector in your home, the alarm isn't necessarily the emergency. It's inviting you to pay attention to something that might be monumental. Number 2, separate the feeling from the response. Feeling anger doesn't make you an angry person. It makes you human. The elegant woman doesn't judge herself for experiencing an emotion. She gives herself permission to feel it while choosing carefully how she responds. There's tremendous freedom in recognizing that your emotions and your behavior are not the same thing. Number 3, give yourself time before making an important decision. Some situations require immediate action. Most don't. If possible, I advise you to give yourself time to think, pray, reflect, or even sleep on it. I refuse to sign anything important without sleeping on it and processing it. Distance often brings clarity. Number 4, protect your sovereignty. Some people benefit when you lose your composure because once you step off your throne, the focus shifts from what happened to how you reacted. That's why I often remind myself, my readers, my clients, and now I remind you, keep your crown on and stay on your throne. Not because you don't have a right to feel anger. You absolutely do. It's because your sovereignty is too valuable to surrender. Your emotions are often gathering information before your mind has connected all the dots. I encourage you to give yourself permission to become curious. Then, listen carefully. Your angry feelings may be pointing toward a conversation that needs to happen, a boundary that needs to be established, a loss that needs to be grieved and processed, a dream that deserves another chance, or a relationship that no longer feels emotionally safe. Whatever it is, it's important to allow the anger you're feeling to make you aware. Then let wisdom decide what comes next. If you found something enlightening in today's episode, be my guest and share it with your fabulous friends who could benefit from these conversations. If you're one of the many quiet listeners who join me each week but haven't followed the podcast, I invite you to follow on your favorite listening platform so these conversations can continue meeting you exactly when you need them. If you're interested in an autographed copy of Becoming Lavishly Loving, exclusive bundles, or learning more about private coaching, you'll find everything waiting for you at becomingpublishing.com. If you host a podcast or community and would like me to speak to your group, I would be honored. You can use the contact page on becomingpublishing.com to connect with me. As we close today's conversation, I'd like to leave you with this thought. Maybe anger isn't asking you to react. Maybe it isn't even asking you to understand. Maybe, just maybe, it's simply asking you to acknowledge that something in your life deserves your attention, to acknowledge that something isn't aligned with your values, to acknowledge that something within your own kingdom needs your care. Just like the smoke detector in your home, the alarm isn't the emergency. It's simply making you aware that something deserves your attention. Then, once you've acknowledged it, keep your crown on and stay on your throne. You have the right to choose your response with love, wisdom, grace, and class. Anyone can stay elegant when it's easy. The elegant woman reveals herself when life isn't. This is where awareness begins to become something more. Thank you so much for spending time with me on Becoming Conversations in Elegance and Empowerment. If something in today's conversation spoke to you and deeper focused support feels right, I invite you to explore private coaching at becomingpublishing.com. Until next time, stay elegant, stay empowered.
Becoming the magnificent Senée, empowered, strong, and gracefully, with poison.